Hi, my name is Jonas. Music production is certainly influenced by fashion trends, but some old school techniques remain useful in many ways. Today, I'll go through a few of my favorite timeless tricks. A sidechain is, as the name implies, a sideways connection between two channels. This way, you can have the signal of channel A influence the channel B in some way. What this is mostly used for is sidechain compression, which is also called ducking sometimes. Let's check out an example. I have these vocals.
Needing a reason for being stuck in the seeming.
And I want to mix those vocals with some synth chords that I on purpose made clash with the frequency spectrum of these vocals. So if we try to mix them the way it is like this, you will hear that the vocals are completely buried beneath the synth. There are many ways to fix this, of course, but one of the old school techniques that are always useful is sidechain compression. So we'll add a compressor on the synth channel and activate the sidechain, and then on the vocal channel, we send the signal to the sidechain. This means that as soon as the vocal volume goes above the threshold, the compressor on the synth channel will be activated. And the way I set it up is that it really compresses the signal quite a lot. So it's a very extreme effect. And of course, I wouldn't really use it that way unless it's like a special effect, but I'm going to exaggerate it a lot so you can hear what it is doing. So first, once again, without. And now let's enable the compressor. As you can hear, the synth signal gets ducked completely by the vocals in a very extreme way, and as soon as the vocals stop, it comes back. This can be used as an interesting special effect, certainly on reverbs. We'll go to an example like that a bit later. But if you use it a little bit more subtle, and you also make sure you do some proper equalization to these channels so that it fits together better this way, because for this example, it was made to clash as much as possible, you won't really hear that it's doing something until you disable it. It can really make the difference for a busy mix where you need the vocals to be intelligible, but you still want all the rest to have enough power as well. In dance music, you usually want a kick to punch through everything, especially a bass line. So for example, if you have something like this, the kick and bass are kind of clashing with each other, and also you don't really have this typical pumping effect that you expect for this kind of tracks. So what did we do? We sent the signal of the kick to the sidechain of a compressor that is on the bassline channel with a very strong ratio. So as soon as the kick reaches a certain threshold, the bassline gets pushed down quite a lot, and then the release is quite short, so the signal comes back really fast again, and you get this typical pumping effect. Let's listen to it. Disabling it again, and enabling. Of course, this is a very extreme way to use it, but it's being used like that all the time actually. But even in other genres, you can use this technique to have your drums punch through the bass guitar, for example. There are many ways that this is useful in a more subtle way. This is really one of those techniques that will be used in any genre of music all the time, even if you have no idea that it's actually being used. And the final ducking technique I'm going to show today is ducking the reverb or delay on a certain signal. For example, on a vocal. Let's take this vocal, which has a very extreme delay on it that is really completely overpowering everything.
I'm feeling the spectrum with you, threads like a spider's web. I'm hanging on for that high you bring from the rainbow of things you've said.
Sometimes you just want to be able to use a very long delay tail like that. It could be the sound you really want, but you also want to have the vocals to still be intelligible. So the same trick you can use again. Put a compressor on the FX channel and send the vocal into the sidechain of that compressor. Then play with the settings a little bit, and you can set it up in an extreme or a subtle way again. I made it quite extreme so you can really hear what it's doing. So now it will make sure that as long as they're singing, the delays are suppressed, but when the singing stops, everything comes back and you get this really big feedback tail. What I wanted to do in this case. So let's listen to it.
I'm feeling the spectrum with you, threads like a spider's web. I'm hanging on for that high you bring from the rainbow of things you've said. I'm not gonna give it up. I know better than to give it away.
A very handy technique if you want to use big reverbs and delays without drowning out everything completely. Now let's talk about gates. A gate is basically a signal processor that is either on or off. So as soon as it gets a signal that is above the threshold, it opens up, and when the signal falls below the threshold again, it closes down. This makes it quite different than a compressor, but a compressor will have a gradual reduction and increase in gain again. This is really on or off. The classic use is, of course, to clean up signals, to separate the signal from the noise. That's why it's called a noise gate quite often. But you can do more creative things with it as well. Certainly if you have a gate that accepts a sidechain channel, like the one here in Cubase. So what I did is program this fast hi-hat pattern. And then just turn it down, put the send to the sidechain on pre-fader, so that means that the signal is going to be sent to the sidechain before the fader is used. So it means we can have this hi-hat out of the mix, you won't hear it, but its signal will still be used to sidechain the noise gate. Here's the gate. So it will open up as soon as there's a signal present, so when the hi-hat is playing, it will open up and close down quite fast in a rhythmic fashion. If you then put a pad through it, in this case I took a Korg M1 choir pad. Let's listen to it without the sidechain. And now let's enable it. You can play with the release a little bit or automate it or something so you have some more control. Gating paths like this in a rhythmic fashion is of course a very classic early 90s trance technique, but you can use it in any genre actually. You can use it very creatively, rhythmically, musically, and do all kinds of fun things, or you can use it in a more boring but useful way to make some room in a mix in a bit more extreme way compared to the ducking and sidechain compression. When I got my hands on my first sampler back in the days, one of the first things I would always try after I sampled the sound was to reverse it and just listen what it sounds like and if it can be used in cool ways maybe. Reversing audio is a really ancient technique and it can still be used in many creative ways. In one of its most basic forms, you simply take the audio, for example something with a good tail like a crash cymbal, and reverse it, and you immediately have a very useful transition effect. And the reverse. Reversing drums, kicks, bass lines can be very cool as well, and you hear it being used all the time already since the 70s at least. Now let's get a bit more creative. Let's take the same vocal again with a lot of reverb and delay.
I'm feeling the spectrum with you, threads like a spider's web.
Now we reverse this part. Then the next thing is to bounce this, so you have this reversed vocal with a lot of reverb and delay, and then you take the bounced file and reverse it again. This way the reverb and delay is before the actual signal and everything starts sliding in a very ghostly and cool way.
I'm feeling the spectrum with you, threads like a spider's web.
Another very nice sound for reversing is a piano. This is used quite a lot in ambient soundtrack stuff, and it has this very otherworldly effect to it. So you take the original piano, bounce that, and then reverse the bounced signal, and it sounds like this. I added a little bit of tape delay on that, by the way, to make it even more interesting. And the final one for today is parallel compression. It's great to subtly or extremely enhance drum loops, vocals, actually any sounds that you want to lift up a little bit. Let's go for an example here. Just a basic 909 drum loop. Let's listen to it. And then I created an FX channel with a compressor on it with very extreme settings, so it's really squashing the sound. Let's listen to the compressed sound only. Now the actual technique is of course to use this in parallel. So we have the original signal and it's in the mix like that, and then we slowly mix in the compressed signal, and you can push it as far as you want. It really depends what kind of effect you want to achieve. Let's listen to this. As you can hear, it's really pumping up this loop. You can use it very subtle, of course, and then it's just, giving a little bit of extra loudness, or go all the way New York style house parallel compression like it's used in dance music a lot. There are actually quite a lot of plugins who are doing this technique out of the box nowadays, but I think it's still worth it to set it up yourself so you have a little bit more control over the way it sounds. Now I have one variation on this, and it's what I call parallel distortion. So it's exactly the same setup, but in this case, you take a distortion instead of a compressor, and of course the results get even more extreme. It's probably best to also put a bit of a high-pass filter on it, so the lows are not completely going over the top. But yeah, let's listen what that sounds like. Now on the full loop with the kicks and claps included, it sounds maybe a little bit too much, but if you would, for example, only do this on hi-hats or only on the clap, you would really boost them and dirtify them in a very cool way. And it's also something that is very useful to get a certain sound. Now, the final version is, of course, combine this, put the compressor and the distortion behind it in series, and you have the most extreme version of this trick. Let's listen to that one. As you can hear, this can really transform and dirtify boring loops in a controlled way. And that's it for today. Just a small grip out of the many possible techniques, but these are the ones I tend to use myself all the time. I hope it was useful for you. One more like this, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Bye bye.